portrait from 1905, concealed for decades, resurfaces, its single haunting detail rendering all who behold it utterly speechless. Construction foreman Michael Sullivan, sweat beading on his forehead, oversaw his team as they prepared to bring down the final wall of the illustrious Whitmore mansion, a relic of Boston's Gilded Age nestled in the heart of Beacon Hill. The Victorian estate, a proud monument erected in 1885, had stood desolate for nearly 30 years, a silent sentinel until the city finally deemed it fit for redevelopment. What began as a commonplace demolition swiftly spiraled into an unforeseen enigma when OS Sledgehammer crashed through the antiquated ornate wallpaper, revealing a clandestine compartment secreted behind the dining room's rich mahogany paneling. "Hold up, guys!" he bellowed to his crew, setting down his tools with deliberate caution. His curiosity piqued. He began to carefully examine the concealed space. Within the slender recess, swathed in aged, yellowed silk and safeguarded by a meticulously crafted wooden frame, lay a large photographic portrait, remarkably preserved against the ravages of time. The image depicted an elegantly attired family of 5, posed with formal stiffness in what appeared to be the very same room where they now stood. The portrait unveiled the Whitmore family in the year 1905. A distinguished, stern-faced father sat regally in a leather armchair, his wife standing gracefully beside him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder in a gesture of poised affection. 3 children completed the family tableau. 2 young boys, clad in matching sailor suits, flanked their parents with youthful exuberance, while a young girl, perhaps 8 years of age, occupied the prominent center position. Adorned in an exquisite white dress, embellished with intricate lace details, she exuded an ethereal presence. Recognizing the potential historical significance of this discovery, O'Sullivan immediately contacted the Boston Historical Society, sensing that it might hold invaluable historical treasures for the city's archives. The portrait's exceptional state of preservation and the enigmatic circumstances of its concealment hinted at a compelling narrative hidden within this seemingly ordinary family photograph. Dr. Amanda Foster, the esteemed curator of 19th-century American photography at the Historical Society, arrived within hours, her eyes gleaming with anticipation as she prepared to examine the extraordinary find. Her discerning gaze immediately identified several peculiar aspects of the portrait's composition and technical execution that seemed incongruous with typical family photography from the early 1900s. "This is extraordinary," she murmured, her voice hushed with reverence as she carefully handled the portrait with white cotton gloves, protecting it from any contamination. "The quality of preservation is remarkable, but more importantly, there's something about the positioning and lighting that suggests this wasn't a conventional family sitting. There's a story here, waiting to be uncovered. We need to investigate this further." The discovery marked the commencement of an investigation that would ultimately unveil one of Boston's most shocking and closely guarded family secrets. Hidden for over a century behind layers of wallpaper and the rigid walls of social propriety, the portrait held the key to a truth that had been deliberately buried. Dr. Foster transported the portrait to her laboratory at the Historical Society, where she initiated a methodical examination using both traditional archival methods and cutting-edge digital analysis. Under precisely controlled lighting conditions, she immediately noticed that while the portrait presented itself as a standard family photograph from 1905, several details seemed amiss, prompting a deeper dive into its creation. The first anomaly that caught her attention was the lighting pattern across the subjects' faces. While the parents and the 2 boys exhibited natural shadows and highlights consistent with studio photography of the era, the young girl in the center appeared to be illuminated differently, almost as if she had been photographed under entirely separate conditions and subsequently integrated into the family grouping through advanced, if unsettling, techniques. Dr. Foster reached out to the Boston City Archives to delve into the Whitmore family history, seeking to unearth more about the prominent family and the circumstances surrounding the creation of this portrait. The initial records revealed that Jonathan Whitmore was a prosperous textile manufacturer who resided in the Beacon Hill mansion with his wife, Margaret, and their children from 1885 until 1920, when they abruptly departed Boston without leaving a forwarding address, leaving behind a shroud of mystery. The archival search yielded birth records for 3 Whitmore children: Benjamin, born in 1892, Charles, born in 1894, and Alice, born in 1897. However, when Dr. Foster cross-referenced these names with other city records, she stumbled upon a chilling revelation that caused her to pause in bewildered confusion. According to Boston death certificates, Alice Whitmore had succumbed to scarlet fever in 1903, a full 2 years before the family portrait was purportedly taken in 1905. This stunning discovery immediately cast a shadow of doubt on the portrait's authenticity and the circumstances surrounding its creation. Could the death record be erroneous? Was this perhaps a different Alice, a cousin perhaps? Or could the portrait's dating be inaccurate, a misremembered year or a deliberate fabrication? Dr. Foster realized she needed to conduct more thorough research to unravel this bewildering discrepancy. She contacted genealogical experts and requested access to additional Whitmore family documents, including medical records, school enrollment information, and social correspondence, hoping to shed light on Alice's fate. The investigation was rapidly expanding beyond a mere historical documentation project, transforming into a potential mystery involving one of Boston's most esteemed families. Dr. Foster also began researching photography techniques prevalent in 1905, with a particular focus on any methods that might have enabled photographers to create composite images or manipulate portraits in ways that could explain the unusual lighting she had observed around young Alice in the family photograph. 2 weeks into her relentless investigation, Dr. Foster made a discovery that sent shivers down her spine and fundamentally altered her understanding of the enigmatic portrait. While scrutinizing the photograph under high-powered magnification, utilizing advanced digital enhancement techniques, she noticed something that had completely eluded initial observation. The young girl's eyes appeared to be artificially positioned, lacking the natural spark of life. Furthermore, there was an almost imperceptible, yet unmistakable, support structure visible behind her small frame. Upon even closer examination, employing infrared photography techniques that unveiled details invisible to the naked eye, Dr. Foster unearthed what appeared to be a slender metal rod or wire support system, meticulously concealed behind Alice's dress, running from the floor up her back to maintain her in an upright position. This type of support was commonly employed in post-mortem photography during the Victorian era, a somber practice where deceased family members were photographed as if they were still alive, creating final, albeit ghostly, family memories. The realization struck Dr. Foster with the force of a physical blow. She was staring at a post-mortem photograph, where the deceased Alice had been positioned and photographed alongside her living family members, crafting the illusion of a complete and happy family portrait. This revelation explained the peculiar lighting patterns, the rigid posture, and the carefully controlled positioning that had seemed so out of place during her initial examination. Post-mortem photography was indeed a common practice in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, particularly among grieving families who yearned for one final image with their departed loved one. However, most such photographs depicted the deceased alone or with immediate family gathered somberly around a deathbed. Creating an elaborate, formal family portrait with a deceased child posed as if alive was exceedingly rare, bordering on taboo, and demanded exceptional skill from specialized photographers who understood the delicate dance between life and death. Dr. Foster immediately contacted Dr. Stanley Rodriguez, a renowned specialist in Victorian mourning practices and postmortem photography at Harvard University. When she shared her findings, Dr. Rodriguez confirmed her suspicions and provided additional context about these obscure photographic practices. "What you've discovered is extraordinarily unusual," Dr. Rodriguez explained during their animated phone conversation. While postmortem photography was common, creating such an elaborate illusion of life in a formal family setting would have required a photographer with very specialized skills and equipment. This wasn't just about preserving memory. This was about constructing a completely false narrative of family completeness, a desperate attempt to rewrite reality itself. The investigation now assumed a completely different character as Dr. Foster realized she had uncovered evidence of a family's desperate attempt to deny the crushing reality of their child's death, going to extraordinary, almost unimaginable lengths to maintain the illusion that their family remained whole, even 2 years after losing their beloved daughter. Dr. Rodriguez visited Dr. Foster's laboratory to examine the portrait firsthand, lending his expert analysis of the postmortem photography techniques employed. His examination corroborated every detail of Foster's initial assessment while adding crucial historical context about the specialized methods used to create this remarkable illusion of life. "This represents some of the most sophisticated postmortem photography I've ever encountered," Dr. Rodriguez explained, his voice hushed with awe as he studied the portrait under magnification. "The photographer who created this image possessed exceptional technical skill and artistic ability. Look at how carefully Alice's eyes have been painted or positioned to appear alert and engaged. And notice how her skin has been treated with cosmetics to create the appearance of healthy color. The level of detail is astonishing." The examination revealed multiple layers of artifice, each meticulously designed to make Alice appear alive and natural within the family grouping. Her hair had been carefully styled and appeared to have been supplemented with additional pieces to create fuller, healthier-looking locks than would have been possible with the hair of a child who had been deceased for 2 years. Her dress, while authentic to the period, showed signs of careful alteration to accommodate the support structure while maintaining an elegant, natural drape. Dr. Rodriguez explained that during the Victorian era, families often went to extraordinary lengths to cope with child mortality, which was tragically common before modern medical advances. Child death was a devastating but frequent reality for families of all social classes, he noted. However, wealthy families like the Whitmores had the resources to commission elaborate memorial photographs that poorer families could never afford. The process of creating such a photograph would have been both technically challenging and emotionally traumatic for the family. Alice's body would have had to be carefully preserved and prepared, then positioned using the concealed support system, while the photographer worked swiftly to capture the image before decomposition became apparent. The lighting and composition would have required multiple attempts to achieve the seamless integration visible in the final portrait. Dr. Foster learned that only a handful of photographers in major cities possessed the specialized knowledge and equipment necessary for such complex postmortem portraiture. The work required not only technical photographic expertise but also skills in cosmetics, clothing alteration, and psychological sensitivity to work with grieving families during such an emotionally charged process. "This photograph represents the intersection of grief, denial, and artistic skill," Dr. Rodriguez observed, his voice filled with a mixture of fascination and sorrow. The Whitmore family wasn't just preserving a memory. They were creating an alternate reality where their loss never occurred, where their family remained complete and perfect for posterity. Determined to understand more about the creation of this extraordinary photograph, Dr. Foster began researching photographers working in Boston during 1905 who might have possessed the specialized skills necessary for such complex postmortem portraiture. Her investigation led her to examine studio advertisements, professional directories, and newspaper archives from the period to identify practitioners of this rare photographic art. Her research revealed that only 3 photographers in the Boston area during 1905 advertised services related to memorial portraiture or bereavement photography. Among these, one name stood out: Herman Blackwood, whose studio was located in the fashionable Back Bay area, and who specifically advertised artistic memorial photography for discerning families in the Boston Globe social pages. Dr. Foster located surviving business records from Blackwood's studio in the archives of the Boston Public Library. The records revealed that Herman Blackwood had trained in London with photographers who specialized in postmortem portraiture and had brought these techniques to America in the 1890s. His client list included many of Boston's most prominent families, suggesting he had cultivated a reputation for discretion and artistic excellence in this sensitive field. Most remarkably, the studio records contained a detailed entry for the Whitmore Family Commission, dated September 1905. The entry described an elaborate family memorial portrait requiring special preparation and positioning techniques. The notation indicated that the session required 3 full days of preparation, and that Blackwood charged the substantial sum of $200, equivalent to several $1,000s in today's currency, for his specialized services. The records revealed fascinating details about the technical process Blackwood employed. He noted using imported cosmetic preparations from Paris to restore natural coloring and custom-designed support apparatus to ensure natural positioning. The photographer also recorded that he worked closely with a local mortician and a seamstress to prepare Alice's appearance and modify her dress to accommodate the concealed support structure. Perhaps most poignantly, Blackwood's notes indicated that Margaret Whitmore, Alice's mother, was present throughout the entire preparation and photography process, personally directing many of the artistic decisions about her daughter's positioning and appearance. The photographer wrote that Mrs. Whitmore insisted Alice be placed in the center of the family grouping, so she remains the heart of our family always. Dr. Foster also discovered that Blackwood's studio closed abruptly in 1906, just 1 year after the Whitmore Commission. His final advertisement in the Boston Globe announced that he was retiring from memorial photography to pursue landscape work exclusively, suggesting that the emotional toll of his specialized practice had become too difficult to bear. Dr. Foster's investigation into the Whitmore family's personal history revealed the profound grief and social pressures that motivated them to commission such an elaborate postmortem portrait. Through correspondence found in the Massachusetts Historical Society archives, she discovered letters between Margaret Whitmore and her sister in New York that provided intimate insights into the family's emotional state following Alice's death. In a letter dated March 1904, Margaret wrote, "The house feels impossibly empty without Alice's laughter. Jonathan barely speaks at meals, and the boys ask constantly when their sister will return from her long sleep. I fear we are all becoming ghosts in our own home, haunted by her absence at every family gathering and social occasion." The correspondence revealed that the Whitmores faced significant social pressure from Boston's high society to maintain appearances of family stability and prosperity. In 1905, families dealing with child death often faced subtle social ostracism, as many believed that such tragedies indicated divine judgment or poor family management. The Whitmores' prominent position in Boston society made them particularly vulnerable to such judgments. Dr. Foster discovered that the family had commissioned the postmortem portrait specifically for a formal family directory being compiled by Boston's social elite in 1905. The directory, titled Distinguished Families of Beacon Hill, required formal family portraits from all participating families. Rather than appear in the directory with an obviously incomplete family or withdraw from the prestigious publication altogether, the Whitmores chose to create the illusion that Alice was still alive. Margaret's later letters revealed the emotional complexity of their decision. "We know Alice is with God," she wrote to her sister in 1906, "but we cannot bear for the world to see our family as broken. This portrait allows us to remember ourselves as we were meant to be, complete and blessed with 3 beautiful children. Perhaps it is vanity, but it feels like love." The investigation also revealed that Jonathan Whitmore had been diagnosed with a heart condition shortly after Alice's death, and his doctor had advised the family that additional emotional stress could prove fatal. Margaret apparently believed that maintaining the illusion of family completeness, at least in their public image, would help preserve her husband's health and protect their surviving children from the full weight of community sympathy and scrutiny. Dr. Foster found evidence that other prominent Boston families had employed similar strategies to cope with child mortality, though none had gone to such elaborate lengths as the Whitmores. The practice of concealing or minimizing family tragedies was apparently more common among the social elite than historical records typically indicate, as these families had the resources and motivation to maintain carefully constructed public images. Working with photography historians and conservation experts, Dr. Foster conducted a detailed technical analysis of the portrait to understand exactly how Herman Blackwood achieved such a convincing illusion of life. The examination revealed the extraordinary sophistication of techniques employed and the meticulous attention to detail that made this post-mortem photograph so remarkably successful. Using advanced digital imaging technology, the team discovered that Alice's eyes were created using a combination of painted glass prosthetics and careful retouching techniques. Blackwood had painted realistic-looking eyes on thin glass discs, which were then positioned over Alice's closed eyelids and secured with a type of early adhesive. The glass was painted to match Alice's natural eye color and included reflective highlights that created the illusion of living, alert eyes. The support structure hidden behind Alice's dress proved to be an ingenious mechanical device crafted specifically for this portrait. Made from thin steel rods and adjustable joints, the apparatus could be positioned to hold Alice's body in a natural sitting posture while remaining completely invisible from the camera's angle. The device was padded with cotton batting to prevent any visible impressions on her dress and was designed to be assembled and disassembled quickly to minimize the time needed for the photography session. Analysis of Alice's skin revealed the application of multiple layers of cosmetics designed to simulate the healthy complexion of a living child. Blackwood had used a combination of wax-based foundations, rouge, and carefully applied powder to mask the pallor of death and create the rosy cheeks visible in the portrait. Even more remarkably, he had used a technique involving small amounts of oil paint to add subtle color variations that mimic the natural blood flow patterns visible in living skin. The preservation of Alice's body for the 2 years between her death and the portrait session would have required advanced embalming techniques that were cutting edge for 1905. Research into mortuary practices of the era suggests that the Whitmores likely employed one of Boston's most skilled undertakers and may have used experimental preservation methods that were not widely available to the general public. Dr. Foster's team also discovered that Blackwood had employed multiple lighting sources and careful positioning to ensure that shadows fell naturally across all family members, including Alice. The photographer had used reflectors and additional lamps to eliminate any inconsistencies that might reveal Alice's post-mortem condition, creating seamless integration between the living and deceased family members. Perhaps most impressively, the final photograph shows no visible signs of the extensive preparation and artificial elements that went into its creation. To observers without specialized knowledge, Alice appears completely natural and alive, integrated seamlessly into the family grouping with no obvious indication of the elaborate deception involved in creating this touching memorial. Dr. Foster's research into the Whitmore family's later history reveals the profound long-term impact that creating and maintaining this elaborate deception had on their lives. City records and personal correspondence paint a picture of a family increasingly isolated by their secret and ultimately destroyed by the weight of their artificial narrative. In 1910, 5 years after the portrait was created, Margaret Whitmore suffered what contemporary medical records describe as a nervous breakdown following a social gathering where she was asked to speak about her daughter, Alice, as if she were still alive. A friend's innocent inquiry about Alice's education had triggered a panic attack that revealed the psychological toll of maintaining the pretense that their daughter was still alive. Jonathan Whitmore's health, which the portrait was partly intended to protect, actually deteriorated as the family struggled with the ongoing deception. Medical records from Massachusetts General Hospital show that he was treated repeatedly for anxiety and heart palpitations related to what his physician noted as familial stress of uncertain origin. The doctor's notes suggest that Jonathan had confided in him about a family secret that was causing enormous emotional strain. The 2 surviving Whitmore sons, Benjamin and Charles, were apparently never told the truth about their sister's death and the circumstances of the family portrait. Letters between the boys and their cousins, discovered in family papers donated to the Boston Public Library, revealed their confusion about Alice's absence from family gatherings and their parents' evasive answers about her whereabouts. In 1915, 10 years after the portrait was created, Charles Whitmore stumbled upon the truth about his sister's death while researching family genealogy for a school project. His discovery of Alice's death certificate and the realization that his family's most treasured photograph was actually a post-mortem memorial created a crisis that ultimately split the family apart. By 1920, the Whitmores had quietly sold their Beacon Hill mansion and moved away from Boston without providing forwarding addresses to their former social circle. Family members scattered across the country, apparently unable to maintain relationships after the revelation of their decade-long deception about Alice's death. Dr. Foster discovered that Margaret Whitmore spent her final years in a private sanitarium in California, where medical records indicate she suffered from severe depression and continued to speak about Alice as if she were still alive. Jonathan died in 1925, and his obituary made no mention of having had a daughter, suggesting the family had completely erased Alice from their official history. The portrait itself had been hidden behind the dining room wall sometime before the family's departure from Boston, sealed away along with the painful memories and elaborate deception it represented. For nearly a century, it remained concealed, waiting to reveal its shocking secret to a new generation of investigators who could finally tell Alice's true story. Dr. Foster collaborated with cultural historians to place the Whitmore family's extreme response to child death within the broader context of Victorian mourning practices and social expectations. Their research revealed that the elaborate postmortem portrait, while unusual in its sophistication, represented an extreme example of widespread cultural phenomena surrounding death, grief, and social status in early 20th century America. During the Victorian era and into the early 1900s, elaborate mourning rituals served multiple social functions beyond simply expressing grief. For wealthy families like the Whitmores, maintaining proper mourning practices was essential to preserving social standing and demonstrating both emotional refinement and financial capability. The ability to commission expensive memorial photography, particularly work as sophisticated as Blackwood's portrait, served as a form of conspicuous consumption that reinforced the family's elite status. Research into contemporary mourning practices revealed that the Whitmores' decision to conceal Alice's death and create the illusion of family completeness was actually part of a broader cultural shift occurring in the early 1900s. While earlier Victorian mourning culture had emphasized open displays of grief and elaborate funeral rituals, the new century brought increasing pressure for families to recover quickly from losses and resume normal social activities. Dr. Foster discovered that child mortality rates in Boston during 1903, when Alice died, were approximately 15% for children under age 10, making the Whitmores' loss tragically common rather than exceptional. However, families of their social class were expected to handle such losses with stoic dignity and minimal disruption to their social obligations. The pressure to maintain appearances often prevented families from properly processing their grief or seeking emotional support from their communities. The investigation revealed that postmortem photography had begun declining in popularity by 1905, as changing attitudes toward death and mourning made such practices seem increasingly morbid and old-fashioned. The Whitmores' commission of such an elaborate postmortem portrait placed them at the tail end of a cultural tradition that was already being abandoned by most families, making their choice even more unusual and psychologically significant. Contemporary medical journals from the period show that doctors were beginning to understand the psychological importance of accepting death and allowing natural grief processes to occur. The Whitmores' elaborate denial of Alice's death would have been viewed by progressive physicians as potentially harmful to the family's mental health, though such medical advice was often ignored by families determined to maintain social propriety. Dr. Foster's research also revealed that the social stigma surrounding child death was particularly intense for families like the Whitmores because Victorian culture often viewed such losses as indicators of moral failing or divine judgment. By creating the illusion that Alice was still alive, the family avoided not only personal grief but also potential social consequences that could have affected Jonathan's business relationships and the family's position in Boston society. 6 months after the portrait's discovery, Dr. Foster organized a comprehensive exhibition at the Boston Historical Society titled Hidden Grief, Victorian Mourning, and the Art of Memory. The exhibition presented Alice Whitmore's story as the centerpiece of a broader exploration of how 19th and early 20th century families coped with loss, denial, and social pressure surrounding death and mourning. The carefully curated display included the restored Whitmore family portrait alongside detailed explanations of the post-mortem photography techniques employed, historical context about Victorian mourning culture. Dr. Foster meticulously documented the investigation that unveiled Alice's poignant story. Recognizing the delicate nature of the subject matter, Dr. Foster ensured the exhibition approached the Whitmore family's profound grief with the utmost dignity, carefully balancing sensitivity with the need to educate visitors on this little-known facet of American social history. The exhibition quickly garnered significant attention, drawing genealogists eager to trace familial lines, photography historians intrigued by the unique post-mortem portraiture, and countless families hoping to unlock secrets within their own ancestry. Dr. Foster was inundated with inquiries from individuals who recognized similar, unsettling mysteries lurking within their own family photo albums. This surge of interest led to the correct identification of several other post-mortem portraits that had, for decades, been either completely misunderstood or misidentified through traditional genealogical research. In a remarkable turn of events, Dr. Foster successfully connected with living descendants of the Whitmore family, including Charles Whitmore's granddaughter, Patricia Chun, a resident of Seattle. Patricia had grown up hearing fragmented, whispered stories about a lost sister, a shadowy figure relegated to the periphery of the family narrative. She had never fully grasped the tragic circumstances surrounding Alice's untimely death and the subsequent, unspoken burdens it placed upon her ancestors. Learning about Alice and seeing this portrait has helped me understand so much about my family's history, Patricia confessed during her deeply emotional visit to the exhibition. My grandfather, Charles, never spoke about his childhood, and now I understand why. The weight of this secret, this carefully constructed silence, must have been an enormous burden for all of them to carry. Patricia generously provided additional family documents, precious artifacts that helped to fill in the gaps and complete Alice's fragmented story. Among these was a diary kept by Charles Whitmore in his twilight years, a deeply personal account of his lifelong struggle with the truth surrounding his sister's death and his parents' well-intentioned, yet ultimately damaging, deception. The diary revealed his unwavering determination to ensure that Alice's memory was eventually honored properly, brought out from the shadows of shame, and acknowledged with the love and respect she deserved. Working closely with Patricia and other newly discovered family descendants, Dr. Foster orchestrated a long-overdue tribute, a proper memorial marker for Alice Whitmore at Mount Auburn Cemetery in Cambridge. It was there, in 1903, that her remains had been quietly interred in an unmarked grave, a stark symbol of the family's attempt to erase her from their history. The newly erected marker, a simple yet powerful testament, reads, Alice Whitmore, 1897 to 1903, beloved daughter and sister, forever remembered. The haunting portrait itself, once hidden from view, was officially inducted into the Historical Society's permanent collection. Properly identified and meticulously contextualized, it now stands as both an extraordinary example of early post-mortem photography and a profoundly touching testament to the enduring power of parental love and the raw, enduring nature of grief. A detailed placard accompanies the image, meticulously explaining Alice's story, the societal norms that influenced her family's decisions, and the unique circumstances that led to the creation of this remarkable and emotionally charged image. Dr. Foster's extensive investigation ultimately concludes with the powerful understanding that the Whitmore family portrait represents far more than just an unusual and somewhat unsettling photographic curiosity. It serves as a poignant window into the complex emotional and social pressures faced by grieving families in early 20th century America, a time when death was often shrouded in silence and mourning rituals were laden with expectation. It stands as a stark reminder that even the most elaborate attempts to deny or suppress death ultimately fail to provide the true healing that can only come from openly acknowledging loss and honoring memory with unflinching truth rather than perpetuating cycles of deception. Alice Whitmore, hidden for over a century behind layers of wallpaper, whispered secrets, and misplaced family shame, finally received the recognition and lasting remembrance that her tragically short life so richly deserved. Her story now stands as both invaluable historical documentation and a deeply moving testament to love's enduring persistence, a beacon of hope illuminating the path from sorrow to acceptance and ultimately, to healing.